All right, so it's good morning, not this good afternoon.
Right.
Welcome to the November 16th meeting of the General Committee Council. Thank you all for being here. I'd like a motion to approve the agenda. Can I get a second?
Second.
Sure. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, approved. The minutes of last month's meeting were nicely written up, prepared, distributed by the staff. I hopefully accept the minutes, Judge. Second. Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that was easy. Okay, chair's report is,
Well, we're gonna go to presenters first.
okay,
And it
That's fine.
actually, it's actually a nice segue from the minutes.
okay. All right, so,
Okay. Because as part of our conversation last week, there was some discussion about the training time, the new app, the MyMTA app, and what it shows, and questions about how it works and how it could work, and its integration with the Long Island Railroad and Metro North, and subways and buses, and the request was for us to have the app magicians join us today. And we have Josh, app magician. Josh, is it G or G?
It is Guy, but if you say it wrong, you just did the initial, so it's fine.
Okay, so we have Josh G, who is app magician for.
I wouldn't say that, but that's very kind. I'll update my resume.
All right. To give us a bit of an overview and to be available to talk and answer questions. So
Absolutely.
because we gave him so little notice, we don't expect him to have a aired presentation.
I actually managed to dig one out. I have a presentation that I'm happy to go through. I just couldn't make it there today with a little bit of short notice, but if the presentation is not quite as tailored, it's a little more general. So please feel free to stop me with, at certain questions. I will, just as a note, I will affirmatively stop for questions at certain points. So if you want to maybe let me get to a point and I'll do a little pause. In particular, I'll have a demo of the app kind of in the middle. I don't know. So first question, has anyone downloaded the beta of the new MTA app? Has anyone signed up for it? Or hey, right on, thank you. I see one person in the back. And I can show everyone how to do it.
is it black?
No,
That's not, it's
No.
white.
So, but I don't know.
Yeah, so I will, yeah. So let me, can someone allow me to share my screen? It looks like it's been disabled, and I just want to share this quick presentation.
it's this one, right? This one, right?
It is that one, exactly. Yep.
This one.
It is just called MTA. It is, and I'll talk a little bit about it, but it is the replacement for MyMTA, which I took over a couple of years ago, about 4 years ago.
Like the testing software. What's the testing?
Yeah. It's so you can't get it in the App Store. I will email everyone on this group. It takes a couple, because we're still in what is called a beta phase. The app is still a little tricky. You can't just access it in the App Store yet. You have to sort of go through a special thing. I will email instructions to everyone at the end of this so you can all get it. Or it's a couple extra hoops. It's a little tricky, but we're also getting pretty close to launch. So it's also, if you have MyMTA, you'll just, once we launch, you'll automatically get the new app. It will just replace MyMTA and you'll get that. So
Will it update automatically? Because I'm just trying to see if I can update mine, and it doesn't, since it's not an app store, it's not.
So yeah, it's not launched yet. So once we do publicly launch it, and I'll talk about that in the presentation, it will just automatically replace MyMTA, assuming you have like app updates on. Like you can have those, some people have those turned off. So if you go to the App Store and hit update, it'll be like a real big update, and then MyMTA will be gone.
Can you continue to use MyMTA?
MyMTA will go away after this app launches. So I can speak a bit about that. So I know there's some great stuff in there, but I think the new app is a really nice blend of of a lot of the best that we have offered folks. So are folks seeing this presentation with fancy lines? Awesome. Thank you. That's very kind of you. So yeah, we really don't. The internal code name we've used with the app is Pristine. That it was because the replacement My MTA was a bit of a mouthful. The app now has a formal name. It's just MTA. As I didn't really introduce myself. My name is Josh. I joined the MTA 5.5 years ago. My background is in building digital products. I joined from Boston City Hall, where I helped rebuild the city website. I've been building out a team at the MTA, basically to sort of change the way IT thinks a little bit about how we build products. Very similar to what Will Fisher did with Train Time. We're close, we're colleagues and pals. Rather than sort of IT, rather than it being send us a ticket and we'll do something, how can we take the lead in delivering beautiful digital experiences for our riders and really like think about how we do that? And that involves, I have a team, not just software engineers, but UX designers, content managers, all kinds of sort of more modern technology roles and everyone's contributed to this product. So, I think it's important. Why have an app at all? We often do stuff at the MTA without asking why. And I think it's a critical way we deliver value to our riders. More people, and this is, I speak pretty generally, but I think everything I'm saying is true for Metro North as much as any other, as any of our agencies. More people use our apps every day than use any single station. And I think, it's not, apps are as tangible to folks, to us as any piece of rolling stock or piece of equipment. I mean, it is a thing people carry around every day and interact with.
You can track when people are in the station and checking for trains arriving?
So we can. I'll talk a little bit about that. Right now we can't. We could. There is a feature in the new app that lets you opt in to share more information in order to get more targeted alerts. But I'll tell you about that in tell you more about that in just a second. But I was just saying that it's to the user, to the person who has the app. It's incredibly tangible for them to have that digital thing in their pocket is a real representation of the MTA. An app we own lets us optimize for our ridership, not a global average. I think this is especially true for Metro North, which has its own unique patterns. But Google Maps transit app, they have to work in Tel Aviv and they have to work in Tallahassee, and we can really optimize for our ridership. It lets us build a long-term direct relationship directly with our riders, right? This is something that we can iterate on based on your feedback and based on our rider feedback. It's not something that we have to try to file a contract with some other company to do or beg Google to make a change or something, right? And then it lets us integrate services that only we can provide, right? Accessoride or rider feedback is my favorite, right? Why, you're never going to open Google Maps and take a picture of a broken stair and send that in. That's something we can do. It's something we're working on. So riders can directly give feedback about in the app and like other things like that only the MTA can do. But how do you make a good app? I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of My MTA. My MTA has about a 2.x rating in the App Store. I think that's about fair. It does some things really well. I've spent a lot of my life keeping it maintained. It's a pretty clunky piece of technology as well. But how do you make a good one? And it's both easy and hard in the same way that like, how do you stay physically fit is like eat healthy and go to the gym. Great, awesome. I don't do either of those things. But for building an app, we did try to do the right thing, which is talk with real people and learn from existing apps. Don't think you're the smartest. It's more about what you don't know than what you think you do. What did we do? We read over 20,000 comments from riders, and we spoke with over 40 people in sort of extended interviews about various kinds of, I won't go through all the feedback, but we talked to a lot of this. These numbers are actually a lot higher now that we've been in the beta phase, which I'll talk about in a second. As I said, I dug up this deck from a pre-launch presentation. So this is things have moved a bit, and I'll update as we go. But basically, be responsive to feedback and think hard about it. We also looked at apps that are good that we like. We looked at, I'll highlight a few, but like we looked at pretty much every transit app out there. And a lot of them are very similar, and I think there's reasons for that. And we looked at. I personally like transit app, but I think a lot of apps actually handle the Metro North poorly. So we looked at Train Time that does it very, very well. and what people liked about it as well. And then we also learned from IMTA. I think it's kind of clunky, but there are things people really love about it, and you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Even if you're replacing something, keep what works, implement, enhance it. It is a new app, but I really view this as an iteration of my MTA. It's an iteration of trying to offer an app for all MTA riders, which is tough. Everyone has specific needs, and how do you meet them in the right way? What we heard, and everyone's different. This was a sort of summation, but people, I've heard people like an all-in-one app. I've heard people like their dedicated app. We've heard a mix, but people don't love having two apps. So we did hear they liked all-in-one. They really like, but it has to deliver the information in a way that's easy and that makes sense. You can't do an all-in-one app and then just pretend that everything works the same. That's not true. You have to think about each mode and how you're going to deliver information. I think that's why train time is so good. But they love getting info directly from the MTA. Everyone we talked to said, even people who used other apps, when things are going wrong, they want to hear from the MTA, right? We're in a weird, like, lack of trust/trust cycle with our riders in a weird way, where it's like they don't really trust us, but they do really want, they want to hear from us when something's wrong. If something's wrong, they go to the source. People want to just get it quickly. They want it to work well. 1 to 2 taps to get the information they need. I think one of the biggest challenges with my MTA is it can take 4 or 5 taps to find anything. It's not really intuitive where things are located. It's not super clear. That was my most frustrating. I'm going to tell you guys, because I don't know, it's the holidays, and I'm like, I used to do the thing with myself of when I was even waiting for the subway. Will the subway get here before I can see the arrival time on my MTA based on pulling it out of my pocket and tapping through to get the subway arrival time? And when I lived on the 4 train, the train would usually win. Now I live on the C train, so it's like the C train doesn't win, but that's a different thing. And I'll say one of the things we heard is LIRR, Metro North riders in particular, often they plan a trip, but not in how do I get from point A to point B, but they use a trip planning experience, like in train time, to sort of see those schedules and see those departing trains. And they do that almost every day. Every time, the travel patterns are such that folks need to see that information to double check when their trains are departing and to see status about them. They use sort of a trip planning pattern, whereas subway and bus riders are a little more, they show up and just want to see when the next couple vehicles are coming. And then the last thing, people freaking love live dots moving on a map. People love to see live vehicles. It helps build trust in the app across all modes. People go nuts for it. Spoiler alert, we don't have them for all modes yet, but it is a thing we are working on super hard, because it's something that people ask for immediately and a lot. And we're just making sure we are very deliberate as we add things, that we add them well. So any questions about any of the research or any of the sort of general of how we've approached it to date? Otherwise, I will pop over and start a little demo.
I just want to say, it's Lisa, that I always say that the MTA should have the best app. So I appreciate that you think the same thing. Whenever anyone says to me, oh, you should try this app, oh, you should try that app, I say, I don't want to try that app. I want the MTA to have the best app. So I appreciate that that's where the sentiment is coming from, because it's frustrating to have to go to look at 2 or 3 other apps to sort of get the average of what's gonna is gonna be the outcome.
I would totally agree with that. And I think honestly, the MTA can be the best app. And I saw someone, just because I'm on virtual, I saw someone else has their hand up. So I'll just, my reaction to that is, I think it takes time to, you grow into a great app. You don't necessarily launch it, right? Iteration and keep improving. But I think the MTA by definition can have it, because we are just designed to serve only our riders, right? I had a fun little rhyming thing before, but it's all the other apps have to try to serve, especially the big ones. There's smaller ones that are a little more boutique, and they can be great, but Google Maps is always going to have to try to scale globally, which means that they can't optimize for our riders and our travel patterns and our modes. And so, it's going to take some time. I think the MTA has never gotten to a point where we're even at par with a lot of the other apps. My hope is that this gets us there. And then we start iterating. That's when the fun really begins of oh, we've gotten arrivals down. People can use this app. They can navigate it well. How can we be better than Google? How can we do things that they can't do, right? Whether that's integrating with more tightly with our rider needs or integrating with the station environment. I don't know. Maybe the app does something cool when you walk in the station because it senses a Bluetooth beacon or so. I don't know, right? Like, but that's where we can do interesting stuff. So, and then there was a woman, Deborah, I think, has her hand up.
Yes, I do. Just in case, my name is Deborah Greif. I have used, I constantly try to use the MTA app. It's not always as accessible and as easy to use. I would hope yours will be more accessible and more thorough because because when I try to get on to find out if the elevators are working, I handed the phone after a while to my son, which you probably know him, Christopher Greif. I said, do
Sure.
it. Can't deal with this anymore before I throw the phone across the room. Also, it's hard, like when you have to know with Accessoroid, I did everything. He does help have hard time when we try to book trips. And there's a little issues, but also the other issue is when you're trying to check your buses. I mean, I live between 6 bus routes. It's telling me, I like limiting me how many bus routes I can pick that I like. I use all of them. And this is also helps people like myself with disabilities. I need to know when an elevator's out.
Yep.
I need to know if there's going to be a major change in the service so that I can reroute myself, because there's some days I can't use Accessorize.
Sure.
So I'm looking forward, and if you need someone who's over 60, with disabilities, I'll volunteer.
Excellent. Yeah, we've got a bunch of testers. As I said, I'll talk about it more. We're in beta, but I will make sure that everybody here gets an invite to sign up to download the version of beta. It's a little tricky. There's a couple extra steps, but it's very doable. And I'm also happy to have one of my team members walk anyone through the actual sign up. And I think that is super. All really good points, and I'll make sure that in my demo I highlight some of that. I think one of the things I'm proudest of is that we've integrated elevator information across the app. But we'll talk more about that. I'll talk more about that in just a second. Did
And
anyone
also,
else?
I only use the MTA app because it's run by the MTA. It's their
Sure.
system. So I don't want to do the others. Thank you.
Josh, if you send me, as Lisa, the link to sign up, I'll share it with the.
Amazing. I'll send you the link to sign up, and I'll say if anyone has any problem signing up, I wrote it out. We've got instructions. But it's a little. There's an extra hoop or two. Email Lisa. She'll email me, or she'll give you my email, and someone from my team will help you get you through it. Does anyone else have any questions about anything before I get to the app? Before I start doing the demo?
Yeah. One thing I would ask is when you're doing the demo, if one thing that we have been looking at is integration between the railroads and subways and buses, but also being able to schedule a trip across operating agencies.
Yeah.
And like west of Hudson.
Yeah, I am.
We tried to do 2 weeks ago. It was it ain't easy.
Yeah, west of Hudson's tricky. This test will be without a rope, so we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
But I am deeply proud of how I am not an app magician, but I feel like my solution is deeply clever, but I may be wrong. We'll see. I'll show you guys how it works, and you can let me know if it's dumb or not. But anyway, so I'm gonna just start the demo then, because I think some of these questions are really like, oh, I should just show you this stuff. So I will go from there. Assuming you're still there. Okay, share. Are people seeing my super crowded home screen and stuff?
Yep.
Awesome, cool. So I am going to open the MTA app, which has you can see the meatball there. Boom. So I'm going to try to lean into I'm going to make sure we lean into some of those things. So first thing you're going to notice, the app is a little more modern looking. We've updated a couple of the overall sort of look and feel of the app pretty significantly. A bunch of things I'm excited about. All of the colors we've invested heavily. They're all 80, like some of the highest levels of color contrast and ADA accessibility. If you have vision problems, the app handles text size increases. Okay, we're still working on that. But you'll see at the bottom, there's sort of 4 main tabs in the app. There's a fifth tab that I don't think I'll go through today, but I'm happy to do another one. That is, if you are an Accessoride user and you log in, Accessoride also appears as a tab in the app. The main tab is what we call the Explore tab. This is a way to search. This is my goal for this one, and my dream is that I don't want to lose like 0 clicks to arrivals. You are in a station. Let's say, and like I'm not near a railroad station, so I can't highlight one, but like you can see I'm near a couple of bus stations, and those bus stations already are appearing there. Or if I go over here to my local station at Ralph, you can, automatically it's just reloading with that station, that the nearby services automatically load, and you can see right there, oh, here's some of the nearby stuff. So that could be great if you are in helpful in transit dense areas, but also helpful on if you're at a railroad station. You can just pop the app open. You don't have to do anything that's going to tell you departing trains. I know that railroad trains work a little, Metro North especially works a little differently. So I'm going to talk more about some of how we've integrated some, I think, the best of train time stuff around that, but it is there. We also have right on this screen, we have favorites. So you can add locations, you can add routes, you can add lines, you can add stations. So you can, even if location services were turned off, you can just have a quick thing to your station where you can click on the station and see stuff. Clicking, let me just do let's do a quick search. We're still working to clean up our data. The fact that it's not always as much as I want it to be. What are you doing there?
I think Andrew Allen had a problem with your using Grand. I think.
Yeah, it's I've spoken with him a few times, and I will likely continue to. His eye for detail is helpful.
You've heard from me a couple times too, but
yeah, 100%. We just made a change to make, we were cutting off certain we made a change to help address that issue that I think is that in this week's update that I think is going to help. And ultimately, I want to find a way to clean up our data, which is a little trickier. But yeah, 100%. We have changed the search results so that you shouldn't be cut off if you're searching for Grands or Broadways, or basically we have like 10 stations. We have many stations that have similar names, partly because our data is messy. The search cut off after like 6 results. So some people couldn't find what they were looking for. We've just increased the number of results. So you'll be able to find what you're looking for, at least. It's still a little like the data thing we're still working on, but I'll show the nice thing is we do keep it relatively organized. So you can kind of quickly go past Subway. So let's just say, I'm going to say Grand Central. You can quickly see a big improvement is like at least the data is displayed in a more helpful railroad friendly way to start. And I'm also going to show you this is just the departure screen. If you are just sort of, the train you're looking for, you're keeping an eye on that. Defaults to outbound. One thing that I'm excited about is that elevators and escalators are integrated directly into the app now. And this is true on all modes. So rather than you have to go to a separate website and then look up elevators, you can just be in here, check out, okay, what's working, what's not working. Go back that. You can even favorite elevators and escalators. If there's particular ones that are essential to you, you can favorite them the same way you would a stop or a route, which I'm super jazzed about. Yeah, and Explorer, it's also a search. You can search for Chili's. I don't know. There's a Chili's probably near me. You can use the search has a pretty nice. You can use it to get around a lot, which is quite nice. Plan a trip. This is where I think we can address some interesting stuff. So, and the thing I think is clever, but may not be. We'll see. I'll let you guys be the judge if it's helpful or not. But this actually, it's got multiple trip planners in the same face here. So if you plan a trip from, let's just say I'm planning a trip from Grand Central to New Haven. Let's say New Haven. Yep. This is actually calling train time. This is just showing train time. This is calling, it's the same data as train time. If you do a railroad station to a railroad station, it's just the train time back end. So that is directly integrated. Similar tools, you can just flip it. You can click on the train. You see, all of the train time information there.
Will you still be able to see it after the train departs? That was one of the things that.
I think we did. I got your comment on that. I think we didn't have that logic in there, but it will be in there for the launch. So and that's definitely, especially as things not that's a big thing, but tweaks like that are very, very doable. So that's where we keep iterating and getting better and better. But I think we we have a ticket. I wrote up the like rules around how to do that in all parts of the app, so that will definitely be updated.
Yeah, I have
Um,
noticed that on the Long Island Railroad and Metro North that the train stays.
On train
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
The one that you're on.
Yeah.
yep. And this similar, you know, if you're on the train, you can you can get notifications. You can favorite particular schedules and routines. You can't favorite individual trains yet, but I'm working on it. I know Train Time's also working on it. You can, and you schedule in the future, see future trains, see past trains. But one thing is neat. So, you know, if you do station to station, you can get, Deborah, I'll call you in just a second. I'm just going to finish going through this section here. Station to station, you get train time results. You can also do just a multimodal trip. So say I want to go from my house to New Haven. I will see the trip planner will then give me a set of recommendations that takes me across the whole MTA. So it will say, and I think we've redesigned it, whereas the MTA app doesn't do, my MTA doesn't display trains super helpfully in that area. This is going to give you multimodal trips that will then also sort of give you, you know, which train to catch specifically in a way that is actively helpful, as opposed to just telling you to take the New Haven line or something like that.
Hudson too, if you have to take path or.
So let's see, what's a good west of Hudson place to go? I'm just blanking on a name. Say again?
Port Jervis. Port Jervis.
No, I'll just say Port Jervis Station. That's a good idea.
We overrule you. Yeah, always.
Okay, yeah, looks like there's a data issue with something. I don't know why it says, I don't know what MSU is. Oh, that might be, we're just integrating some path stuff. So we may not have cleaned up the data yet.
Montclair State University on New Jersey Transit.
It's telling you to change in Secaucus. Yeah, that's why it said that.
Oh,
cool. So. Yeah.
How about now you went my preference?
Right, but it's.
I outrank her.
Yeah, but.
How do you spell that?
N-A-N-U-E-T.
N-A-N-U-E-T. Sorry, I just couldn't quite hear you.
Wow.
Yeah, that was without a net. We've been integrating other services. One of the things that we're working on in the trip planner, it doesn't have every single, you know, my MTA had a whole bunch of services in it, but we didn't do a very thoughtful job of how we display them and making sure the data is all correct and right. So we're starting with just MTA and a couple of ones like Path and Transit, New Jersey Transit, that are like kind of essential, basically part of the whole network. And then we're going to start adding more like Nice Bus, CT Rail, you know, stuff that's other.
Beeline,
exactly. Yeah, Beeline's high on the list. We have a list that is, but it's like we want to like do them deliberately rather than everyone in the pool, and we'll figure it out later.
Hey, you're doing great. This is wonderful.
When I couldn't see the search results when you were searching for New Haven, but it looked like the results were in order of trip time and not departure time. Is that, can you like check that?
Yeah, hold on one second. I just need to tell some folks in my next meeting that I'm going to be late because this is more important. So give me just 1 second.
Vastly long.
And Will, you may need to jump in that, I don't know.
So,
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't need, so if you need anything train time wise, I can say.
Yeah, I think what was I going to say? So what was the question was about how it's sorted? Yes. So it actually, yeah. So it actually sorts differently based on on what that kind of search it is. You know, so say if it's Grand Central to New Haven, it's basically we're trying to replicate train time in as many ways as possible because that experience is so well designed and so well done for riders. So it does sort by departure time, scheduled departure time, not actual departure time, I believe, which is how train time does it. If I'm wrong about that, we'll update it. If you search the other trip planner that's like the cross MTA one, so if I just did like my house to New Haven, it will search by like it often gives you optimizes what we're calling best results. So it kind of gives you what we think is the best possible trip.
So that's like out of order, right?
It depends on, yeah.
That's out of order.
Yeah.
Let me see. So it's, I will take a look at the sorting. So can you say more about what's out of order about it? It's that the four.
Your first departure is the longest trip, so it comes out last on your list.
Gotcha.
The third departure is like, I need a train now. And it's really the third departure that you look at.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those areas where we're still multimodal is still tricky, but I'll definitely throw this to how because the best list isn't necessarily sorted by quickest departure. We balance out a bunch of factors in
This looks like the shortest travel time.
It's a combination of
shortest travel time rather than being by the soonest departure.
It's a number of different factors. A lot of them equal sort of shortest travel time, but it's like we have a certain penalty for transfers. I'm happy to go deeper into maybe in a sidebar on like the trip planning engine tuning for the multimodal trip planner. That's definitely going to be an ongoing work in progress of how do we do this, and then also how do we get more agency specific when a trip involves a certain leg, maybe that has higher things. Right now we have some general levers to pull, and we're pulling on those. But yeah, it's not purely just shortest duration, but it's like a combination of shortest duration, number of transfers, overall like pain kind of things. So when you say again,
they look like they're all the same 11-minute walk, 2-minute walk.
Oh yeah.
And then a 3-minute.
Yeah, one of the things we've changed about the trip planner is that it goes. This one is a little different than MyMTA. MyMTA has uses Open Trip Planner 1.3. This is 2.0 of the same model of software that we've kind of updated. And I'll be frank, there was a lot of weird cruft in some of our custom work around the old trip planner, and so we're kind of tuning a little bit from scratch, but the results are already proving better because we got rid of the cruft. Go ahead.
By search from Grand Central, without any other, subways or anything intervening. And it still put it in the first train is 4:13 p.m. The next train is 2:31, then 12:31, 1:31, 3:27, 3:02, 1:01, and it's sorted by the trip time.
What's your destination? What's your destination?
From current location, Grand Central, to New Haven.
So is it literally current location, or is it actually Grand Central Station?
No, it literally says current location.
Yeah, so that's one of that's one of the areas where we're trying to balance it out. If you do current location, it will in the app, it will place you at a latitude and longitude. It doesn't know that we have not yet connected it to that, like it knows you're inside Grand Central, so you're from Grand Central. So it is using, and we will definitely tune that. But I'm trying to think, I don't know an address but basically it's using, the way to get train time style results is to plan a trip from the station to like enter Grand Central and enter New Haven versus current location to New Haven, if that makes sense. And
I'm sorry, can we just take this up to a 10,000 foot view for a second?
Sure.
You haven't understood, what is the mission of the app? What is the app seek? Is it just a trip planner? Is it trip planner plus cost? Like, what does the app actually do?
Sure. The app the mission of the app is to deliver the best possible information about travel to MTA riders. That's arrival and departure information for some folks. That's trip routes for some folks. That's trip plans for some folks. That's sort of departure. That's statuses, and we've got a status tab that I haven't gotten to yet, but you can see a lot of information, add favorites, manage stuff like that. We can get to that in a second, but yeah, pretty simple. It's just, the simplest thing is comically general. Provide information to help people navigate the system.
And also, how crowded the train is.
Yeah, Metro North perspective, train time does all that.
Sure.
So
yeah, I will say that you can. This isn't right now. This isn't planning to replace train time. Train time is a phenomenal product.
You're still going to have 2 apps.
Yep. You'll need to ask other senior folks about the overall strategy. I have my thoughts, but train time's phenomenal. I'm not looking to replace it, but we've got MyMTA now. This is looking to replace that, which is a pretty subpar experience with hopefully one that's a lot better and eventually is as good as train time for everyone.
Wow.
So Josh, what is your perspective in terms of whether we should be using 2 apps versus 1?
I've got a perspective, but I think it's like there's a lot of different perspectives, and I tend to think one is easier to iterate on, but there's also a trade-off of making sure everything has the best possible experience for each rider. And we could debate, that's something we could get into a pretty deep esoteric debate over that. My main goal is to replace my MTA with something that's great. And that's something that doesn't totally fail for railroad riders. And that I think can be competitive to it with all the other, the larger set of features. But, we'll see. That train time, train time's really good. We'd be very stupid to get rid of something very good for something that's in development. And I don't think that's going to happen any time soon.
It doesn't sound like it. Is MTA ever going to house tickets?
Ever going to what?
Are you ever going to have tickets in the MTA?
It's on our roadmap. I can talk about our roadmap in a second. I'd like to, but it would be able to manage it across each.
But I think that what a difference that I see is that the train time app doesn't integrate subway bus,
Right, that's the.
and that you can't get across, that's what
See,
Google Map trip.
I want to go to
for.
Google Maps because it's like getting to Grand Central usually is just only half of the
Yeah.
trip, right? So for me, I love train time, but then I go to Google Maps.
That's what this would.
And
this is
because
for.
this integrates this, I'm happy.
Because Google Map does not know that
Right.
I have no 7 train for the rest of my life. On weekends until the vets come home. But the MTA app does. So that gives me, it doesn't tell me I need to walk
Yeah.
for 14 blocks. It tells me that I can catch a shuttle bus. If there's
real time.
this,
right?
yeah,
It's
this is
time,
real
whereas
time.
Google is not always as updated. or-
They don't always have that. So
So
if
Josh-
there's a.
Do you have a sense of, because I think having an app is really great. Do you have a sense
Yes,
of what percent of riders use apps? Because as we're always struggling to increase ridership, I think if we could get more people familiar with the apps, then people are more likely to take mass transit.
I have a good sense of that, if that's
Yeah, go ahead,
okay.
Will. Yeah,
Um,
please.
So right now, 94% of people who take a Metro North or Long Island Railroad train use train time, either for trip plans or for ticket. So basically everyone who takes the train uses train time. I also have a decent sense of the numbers of how many people have the app to begin with. I don't know how many of those live in the New York City area, but probably most of them are in the region, and that number's approaching 5 million. I don't find that to be a super important number because it doesn't reflect how many people use it on a given day. But to your question of how many people have apps and, is that a small segment or a big segment? The short answer is that it's a huge segment.
I just, getting back to my, current location to New Haven,
Sure.
I think those search results should be sorted by arrival time.
Sure.
And then you can determine when you want to leave, what train you have to catch in order to get to your destination at whatever time. And then you'll be able to see like, oh, this one's a local and it's going to take 2.5 hours, and this one's an express and it's only, 90 minutes or something, so that's the way I would.
Is it possible to give somebody the option of personalizing
That's
the
right. I
search?
was just gonna say that.
Because, on
Yep.
other things like airlines and Amtrak and so forth, you can search by quickest train or something like that. So is that possible? Because that would people have different interests.
100%. So we've got a couple of different preferences you can integrate there. You can also favorite. It knows recent searches. It will know. So you can very easily sort of. One, it can know a lot about your locations, so you can have recent places you searched, or very quickly get to that. In terms of the preferences in the app, you can basically sort of have the trip planner ignore or prefer, avoid or prefer certain modes. So
awesome. Yeah.
And then, right now we have we're trying to sort of, a lot of our feedback was that people I think people like to customize, but I think we also got a lot of feedback that people didn't want to be forced to customize. So people wanted to it was interesting. People wanted us to have a point of view to say
Yeah.
tell me what you think is best, and then I'll tweak it from there. And so, and that's, But yeah, we have some options here around fewer transfers and less walkings. I think there's definitely, that's an area where this can grow as we get more interesting feedback. Like, here's how I think this should go, as well as our perspective on best is really going to continue to evolve probably forever, right? Where Google Maps has a I will say decade head start on this, but we have a lot more local knowledge, and we'll just sort of keep optimizing and thinking about, okay, in particular examples, do we want it to behave very differently or a little differently or what? In terms of I appreciated that feedback around that current location to New Haven. I'll definitely take that back to the team and start thinking about how we do that better.
Okay, great. So just sort by destination arrival time. And the other thing is, if you wanted to see like the train status of a train that has already departed Grand Central, it's like, if you pull it down so that you scroll up, it'll show you like past departures.
Yeah.
As we talked about, because that train time was doing that, but not the MTA app, so we had talked about that.
Okay, that's it for now.
So that, then I have a question for Will, who's also on, and well, you're the grandfather of all of these apps, even though you're younger than I am, right? But you are you still engaged in the train time?
Yes, I'm very engaged in train time. I'm not so much engaged in the new MTA app, which is, why I kind of referred you to Josh. But yes, all day, every day with train time.
So is the train time app continuing to evolve also? And are you working in parallel to adapt and adjust similarly?
So we're not working so much in parallel because I think Josh and I have slightly different visions about where this app, kind of where the app ecosystem goes. But the short answer is yes. Train time is continuing to evolve. We're working on a feature right now where you can keep track of the train that you're on, right? Once you click through to a trip plan, a lot of people have asked to keep track of the train that they're on at that moment because they feel sometimes they lose that in the app. So that's a big feature we're working on right now. We're also thinking about using AI to kind of have a chatbot experience to make it a little easier for new users to figure out which fare they need. I mean, obviously, we'd love to kind of work on the whole tariff and come up with a better situation there. But right now you have all sorts of rider classes and peak and off peak and ticket types. And we kind of want to fill that gap in terms of the complexity of our fare structure to what any new customer needs to understand with AI. And AI has gotten to a place where that's doable. So those are two things that come to mind of stuff we're working on.
Awesome. Well, I refer you to our report that looks at fare integration across the railroads and the other systems as well. But that does lead me to the question of Omni integration into the fare payment structure of the apps. And I know that we still have a few years, I'm not going to say decades because we're past that, years before Omni does come to the railroads. And how do you envision it working through and with the apps?
So I'm more involved in this probably than Josh because some of my role now involves a bit around fare policy. So, for example, I saw, the stuff that PCAC was doing and, when it was a draft, and I work with Laura Wiles on some of the fare stuff. So the short answer is, that's, and especially, this being a public meeting, it's a little hard for me to talk about kind of what the plans are because they may involve vendors and
say no more. Right, we got it.
So we'll have another conversation offline.
Sure. Yeah, I can kind of tell you what's on our mind and what we're thinking, just in terms of vendors, but also in terms of there's just stuff that's not public, and we want to make the experience as good as possible. We think certainly on the train time team, And I think everywhere, obviously in the MTA, we're thinking very deeply about what our customer needs. And sometimes those don't entirely align with, what we said we would do 6 years ago. Either because no one had thought through it particularly thoroughly, or it turned out we couldn't do it. So I and my team is thinking very deeply about how can we deliver the most value to customers. And it may look different than what's out there publicly, but I'm happy to talk in a different forum.
Sure, that would be terrific. Thank you very much. And I'm glad to hear that those conversations are happening. I see that Peter Ramos has his virtual hand up.
Yeah, this question was more for Josh, but I guess Josh dropped off, correct?
No, I'm still here. I just stopped sharing because we've moved on to other things, so it felt weird to have that.
Oh, so real quick, and we can take this offline. Josh, have we figured out, if I have a travel mode from 14th Street to Marist College, have we figured that trip? Because the app when it originally was coming out wasn't addressing that very well.
So just sort of specify which 14th Street, like 14th Street station on the 2-3, or the path station, or.
Well, for instance, if you type in 14th Street and 14th Street loop, okay, it will tell me right now on my system was telling me taking the bus to Metro North. Then it was telling me taking the train to Poughkeepsie. It was not giving me the most current train out of Grand Central Terminal. And then right now, and again, this is a station-to-station issue. When we give you the stop at Poughkeepsie, we're telling you to walk to Marist College. So fundamentally, we're still not there yet on the first mile, last mile. So I didn't know, where we're progressing or what the sort of phase would be.
Let me know. Let me just, because I'm having trouble imagining the trip. So let's just do it live and see what it does. So if you can just give me that trip again. So it's the destination is Marist College.
Yeah. So Marist College is obviously not at a station stop. It's about a mile away from Poughkeepsie.
Yep.
But if you type in like the pre-population, if I typed in the word 14th Street Loop, it won't come up as a station stop. It'll just come up as a specific geolocation. So
interesting.
There. Yep. So this is Stuyvesant Town. That just happens to be where I live.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So this is sort of the test case. So right now it tells me to take a bus. So it doesn't even tell me to take the L train, which is quicker. And then the next train from Grand Central to Poughkeepsie is not. There's a quicker train than at 246 or whatever it is. There's probably we probably have a train to Poughkeepsie either every 30 minutes or every hour.
Oh,
so I think I need to. So I just go ahead. Just you want to say something, sir?
Oh, this is back to the sort order.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, we can. We'll definitely take a look at that. So I went ahead. So just taking a look at this. So I went ahead and said avoid a bus, and I got a couple of elements there in terms of. Sorry. Doing it live. So I'll take a look. I mean, I think what you're seeing here is it takes into account a bunch of factors. So this one calls it and it's also taking into account live data, which can give Train Time does that also, but it's doing a lot of live bus and subway movement. So it looks like 3.5 hours there. And then when I had the bus, why does it say that's better? That says it's probably prefers the bus here just because it tends to weight heavily. People, we have gotten feedback that people prefer to take make fewer transfers. So that it's probably giving you a trip that only has one transfer recommending the bus instead of 3 transfers. So that the L to the 4 to the railroad. And then, but I think which, I completely get the L is faster but some riders may, we got feedback on both sides there, but it's definitely a balance to strike. But then in terms of, getting it to the sorting by destination to get there, that's something we'll definitely look at. We have we had that sorted for a bit and we tweaked it. And this is very helpful feedback. We got some feedback to go in a different direction around we were sorting purely by arrivals, and it was giving you some weirder trips that had a whole bunch of transfers. It was telling you to go like transfer 5 times because it was 2 minutes faster. So this isn't it's an ongoing tuning thing, but I hear the signal loud and clear, which is like it's stupid to recommend a trip that gets you there an hour later over another one that are roughly the same. So yeah, that's definitely something we'll keep looking at and keep iterating upon. And definitely, please, as you guys sign up for the beta, there is, I won't do a full thing, but there is a app feedback. Please send that stuff. I mean, you can send it straight to me, but honestly, it's better to do it there. That's looked at and logged. Like I've got a team looking at that all the time, looking for that then goes to the trip plan, the various teams that work on the app and the trip tuning teams. So that's definitely like, it's not a go nowhere, like it is actively monitored and so that's a really great way to provide feedback.
Okay, great.
That's awesome.
Well, I look forward to downloading the app.
Yeah.
We'll definitely-
Yeah, and I will definitely be, and I think this is really helpful feedback to me. We've literally made a huge change to the trip planner this week to try to improve some things, and maybe we went a little too far in one direction. So maybe we'll tweak it a bit the other way.
Thank you very much
you.
for your time. We really
you.
appreciate it. And fascinated. Thank you.
Will, is there anything you'd like to add as well?
Not necessarily, unless you have a train time specific question or, you know.
Richard does.
Yeah, it was like, my boss meets in from Scarborough, right, on Metro North, and, he buys a monthly, and this month he went on last month, he went on a cruise, like mid-month, and he got on his train after his cruise, and it's like his ticket wasn't there. So the conductor was like, oh, well, you gotta log in, put in your phone number or whatever. He logs in, and his ticket's not there. So he bought a couple of one-ways to tie him over. And then he got to the office and he's complaining to me. It's like, oh, my ticket disappeared. You know, where'd my monthly go? And, you know, I thought like, oh, well, maybe partial month, it refunded you automatically or something already. But no, it was because his monthly was on his email login. And he had logged in with his phone number and they're like not tied together. So now he's got a couple of extra one-ways that he's not using because he's back to his monthlies on his number.
Right, so I have two questions there. Can you tie your email and your phone to the same login? And the other is, can you transfer a ticket that you purchased on train time to someone else? Because I've tried to do that and I can't.
So you definitely can't transfer it to another account, and that's on purpose, right? We don't want you showing it to the conductor, transferring it to your friend who's about to take it 30 minutes later, and then they show it.
But if it's an unused one-way or something. If I ride one for myself and one for my friend, they have to ride with me, or mine is about to expire, then it expires because I can't give it to someone like I could with an old paper ticket.
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
it is to have it expire.
Yes.
So the one way might make sense. So there are a couple answers here. The first off, if it's a monthly, we don't want that at all. The same way that we don't want people sharing a monthly pass, right? That's the reason I believe in the past, or you don't want it sharing it with your spouse. You go in 2 days a week, your spouse goes in 3 days a week. You get to just, right? That monthlies are not designed that way. That's not the fair product. And so if it's a commutation pass, right, a monthly or a weekly, we don't even want this to begin with. Now, if it's a one-way or round trip, I can see a world where we want that. We do find that 96% of customers buy the ticket within 24 hours of traveling, which is to say that most people don't have those tickets sitting around in their account, right, for future travel. Now, I would love to be able to do kind of what you described. There are two considerations, or one is, I believe this actually came out of your report, is kind of if we tighten the fare validity window, this will be moot because no one's going to have tickets sitting around that they haven't activated. So if you buy your ticket more or less right before you board, this, like I said, this will be moot. And again, that's I don't think that's from you guys. That's actually from the Blue Ribbon panel.
Right, that's the blue ribbon.
The second is we probably could have been able to do this. It rests a lot on our vendor, Masabi, the ticketing vendor. And just, there's something that I can do easily on our team. Some things we rely on vendors to do. And that's, a 12-month timeline. So if fair validity happens, that's probably also a 12-month timeline. So it will be moved. But I think it's a fantastic request. The question about the accounts is also an interesting one. So before the unifying train time with the icon, that one, right, the blue one that does Metro North and Long Island Railroad, before that came along, we only had, when you had e-tics, you had a username and password login. And it would log you out after 14 days. So if you did go on a cruise and you came back, right, and you haven't taken the train, we'll say in 14 or 15 days, you get logged out. And people hated this for good reason. We created a whole new set of logins through, hopefully the other voice in the room isn't distracting, through email and phone. And they do not combine with the first. It's just a feature it's a combination of feature we didn't get to and would be really hard to do. And I will say one stat that I love is that there are few million accounts on the old ones. Because it logs you out and people hate to log back in, we have gotten 80% of users without prompting them to just use their phone number. Those types of accounts never log you out. So slowly but surely, we have seen millions of people move over to these new types of accounts that will never log you out. There's a little of that, transition headache. But once it's done, if you have your monthly and your phone number based account, you go on a cruise, you come back, your monthly will still be there. You won't be logged out. So it's unfortunate. I don't have a better answer for you, but it's a dwindling problem.
I think with the monthly, it like automatically keeps showing up in his account. So it's like, oh, well, maybe we'll do a switch 1 month. But it's like, the end of November rolls around. It's like, oh, your monthly's like sitting there waiting to be activated on December 1st. So he doesn't have that opportunity to switch unless we like deactivate it, I think, or stop the re-enrollment, or I don't know. If he doesn't activate it at all on December 1st, we'll just get refunded to him, or
what I would suggest, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, maybe that's something we can work out with you offline.
maybe.
Or is that?
There must be an answer to that.
Yeah, but that's why we haven't switched to just his phone number.
Yeah.
And
Or we can switch that, on New Jersey Transit, I logged in with my work email on my phone, and you can never go to a different email. Never. That's your phone, your device is what you're logged in with, only one email address ever.
Wow.
So
Is there a way you can personalize this experience with a person calling someone and they say, okay, let me bring your account up. We'll make the switch right here. Is that
Yeah, he can use the chat function in the app. We get about 500 chats a day, and he can chat with the rep, and they'll transfer the tickets over the new account. No problem.
Because the way I know we did with my wife's senior Metro card. And mine too.
So just a quick question. You said that soon the majority of riders will be purchasing their ticket just before they take the trip. What's the rationale? Is that what is that supposed to accomplish?
It's to curb fare evasion. So what we see a lot is a lot of people buying the ticket in advance. They might buy it before. A lot of people buy the ticket. Most people buy the ticket before they get on the train. Most people wait for the conductor to activate their ticket. So now it's going to be the idea that we have in mind, and that the Blue Ribbon panel suggested, is to buy, and then that ticket will expire a few hours later. There'll be no separate activation.
Oh, I see. To save a step.
And now the one perhaps logical reaction for customers is to then say, okay, well, fine. If it's going to activate as soon as I buy, I'm going to wait till I see the conductor to buy. And we're trying to work through methods that we could discourage that too. So we're basically saying, look, you have to buy before you get on the train, whether you see the conductor or not, right? And so if the conductor doesn't come by, you still pay, which is the idea here. You should be paying for travel, whether a conductor came and collected or not. And the same would apply to paper tickets, right? You buy a paper ticket and within 4 hours, just like city ticket, it wouldn't be good anymore. So you buy a paper ticket, you get on a train, if a conductor comes by, they take the ticket from you. If they don't, you still paid. And it recoups a lot of costs for us.
On NJT, occasionally the conductors leaving Penn Station tell the, make a PA announcement, please activate your ticket now because you may not have the self-service in the tunnel. And when the crew member comes by and you don't have it active, you're going to pay the $5 fee.
Okay, that's, because on Metro North, people typically don't activate the tickets.
Always announcing to activate it.
They announce it, but then you still have the conductor having to stand there and wait. until
We've
somebody
asked
does it.
about whether there was consideration of having the fee be tagged on if somebody hasn't activated their ticket. But some of the concern,
Did that on the Long Island Railroad for a while and infuriated.
it infuriated passengers,
As well it should.
yeah, and
This is
they're
the better answer.
trying to avoid confrontation.
Why?
There are a lot of,
Two-step
yeah,
process.
trying to reduce the number of assaults and stuff. But there are a lot of different technologies now that can, once you board a train, it can automatically activate your ticket. That brings about a whole nother bunch of other labor-related issues that would
Do we know anything about, there's apparently a pilot program of on-platform
Yes, I
ticket
was going to
checking?
bring that up.
Yeah,
Is
the
that-
ticket gating,
Yeah.
gate checking.
Yeah, they just.
Oh, did they?
Last week, but it's very few details about how they're gonna make it work.
Do you, Bull, do you or Josh know anything that you can share with us about that, or Peter? About the gating?
About technologies for
Yeah, about
activating.
the gating pilot on Metro North.
Forward to the television. That's people will randomly be
Are you,
selected.
you're talking about the thing on the platform?
It was
Yeah.
just announced on the other day.
Yeah, it was also in the press release.
Yeah, yeah, that's a Metro North initiative. I think it's in this vein, which is to see if we can get people to activate before they get on board. I would speak to someone like Nate Gilbertson about that. I not entirely sure what we want to get out of that, because if we find that people activate because we force them to, I guess that's no surprise, but we can't really man every single station to force them to. And if we find they don't activate, I don't know what else that tells us, but it's a Metro North initiative.
It's weird, you're not allowed to stand on the platform without a valid ticket, that's not.
Yeah.
It's a weird. it's a
Just
weird-
one point, in terms of having it set so that, like, if I'm getting on a train at 8 o'clock and I don't buy my ticket to 8:05, I think if the penalty was less than $5, people wouldn't be so pissed off.
That's the
with
Jersey
it.
Transit's 5 here. It's some extra amount that brings it to like a full $1 or 50 cents.
Oh, so that shouldn't be that bad. Okay,
It's a
never mind.
percentage. I don't know what the percentage, but in Jersey it's fine.
Okay.
All right, anything else?
This is really very.
Yes,
helpful.
this was really, really
Thank you
very
so
You
much.
guys are doing great work.
Thank
We
you so
really
much.
appreciate the work that we're doing and follow up with
You can be sure you'll be getting feedback.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Josh and Will. Thank you.
Yes, both, sure.
You're welcome to stay.
They have things to do, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right, so Chair's report was distributed. Anybody have any questions?
That's good.
Do we have any updates? Is the Hudson line fully back after the?
No.
I saw there being a lot of
No,
complaints. from
yeah,
people
I mean,
about
yeah,
the-
you know, also about the fact that I'm going northbound and track 4, they gotta walk over and force down to the other
Yeah,
side.
do you have any timeline on?
And I sent an email to one superintendent this morning.
But also, certain trains are not stopping in Scarborough and Phillips Manor because there's northbound trains on track 4. And people going south would be waiting on track 3, but track 3 is not open there. So there's trains skipping Phillips Manor and.
I think the initial, to your point in the report, the initial recovery was heroic, but it seems like we haven't made a
We're
lot.
still working on track 3, which is the northbound local track here. That's why because of Phillips Manor, that's why they bring the trains up on 4 going in. There was a train going up on track 3 when I was going into the city with the, right, and I-12, I-13. All right, I'll give them a call after the meeting is over and find what's going on there. Yeah, it's kind of annoying. But there was a lot of damage there. So I don't think, is anybody any questions about this? Okay, so.
Well, I guess along those lines, it's like, are there other locations that have been identified as potentially being? Well,
This kind of stuff.
yeah,
They are looking at it, yeah. They are looking.
because I think for years you could go back and Google Maps and they're like, boy, there's a big crack on that lawn. Then, you know,
Yeah.
now it's finally slid down, but I don't know, it's.
I'm sure we're gonna we'll get a report on the 27th is the Monday. Last Monday of the month will be the Metro Water, the Joint Railroad Committee meetings, and I'm sure we'll be making good report.
I think it would be helpful at that meeting to also ask about why Amtrak wasn't moved over.
Yeah.
To the Metro.
It should be like an
Grand
automatic,
Central.
it should be like an automatic thing.
You really can't take an Amtrak train that arrives at Pearl Harbor and say it's gonna go to Penn Station or Grand Central, because the third rail shoes are different.
But they've done it, but they used to go out of Grand
They've done it,
Central.
but they have to know in advance so they can equip some locomotives with the Metro North type 3 rail shoe. Otherwise, the Long Island, Amtrak uses the Long Island, which is overrunning, and
Like the
Metro
subway.
uses under.
And path.
And,
Do they have any of those kind of,
Yeah, they have.
Well, they have done it, but they need to install them in advance, so you have to know ahead of time.
Sunday,
With
Monday,
a few hours
Tuesday,
notice, they
Wednesday.
can do it, you would think.
I mean.
And I know that they-
An emergency protocol could
Yeah.
be implemented pretty quickly.
I have heard that they already keep their crews qualified.
Well, they might have to have a pilot crew.
Okay, well, that's easy.
If there's crews available, yeah.
I think their crews are qualified because they need to be on all of the different lines, just from what I hear in the cafe car, Amtrak crews.
Oh, okay.
That's why you get all the best stuff.
Yeah, they did qualification.
All right, it's definitely good. Why
Should
don't
ask
send, why don't
Mike
send
out
it,
there.
send it to them in advance. So they
Peter,
can
do
make
you
an
know
adjustment.
by chance?
Peter?
What was the question? Sorry.
About if there had been any contingency conversations about Amtrak running into North Central during the Michigas?
I mean, I'm not aware of it. Is your question if we have service disruption in Metro North, whether Amtrak would be running into Grand Central?
Well, with the
Or-
Amtrak disruption, it would have seemed as though that Amtrak could have run into Grand Central relatively easily. As they have had service in and out of Grand Central in the past.
Okay, so yeah, to backtrack. So obviously with the Amtrak service disruption, we were cross honoring, and I think that was a decision that was made between the two agencies. Your latter question, as you probably know, in order for their engineers to ride on our territory, they have to be qualified. Their
No,
qualifications have to
they
be.
generally are. It just says, the whole thing is a mechanical thing to switch the third rail shoes to the Metro.
So then they're not necessarily always qualified. Remember, qualifications only last for a period of time, and they actually have to operate in our territory in order to maintain their qualifications. So it's not, no, but it's not as simple as turning it on, the next day. So I don't know the full answer, but I suspect basically it was probably as simple. We can do cross honoring. They probably anticipated that the service disruption would be, a shorter period than it actually was. And that's, it, again, I think was the simplest and most easiest path. Because obviously those customers coming into Grand Central would still have to, their final destination was certainly not Grand Central. It was, either Penn Station or further south from there.
Let's see if we can't get to have a policy that if it's going to be a certain length of time where they don't know that they can start to work on that. It's, we're interested in keeping ridership, and it's hard enough that the people now are not going to get directly to Penn Station, and many have onward trips elsewhere on the Amtrak system, and then they have the extra expense of getting from Grand Central to Penn Station and vice versa. So I think it's something that it should be a policy. All right, well, thank you for that. All right, are we ready to move on to other things? Because we're out of time, but we have a hard stop. All right, I'm the
Okay. Mhm. So since since we met in Grand Central for our report release, we have had, we've been continuing to have conversations with elected officials, with, some policymakers. And, the MTA has received our questions about some specific costs related to specific recommendations, including how much it would be to implement the senior and disabled half fare rates in the morning peak for railroads, and also to implement the weekly city ticket. So that if we have those two rates, how much it will cost, we can try and get funding for it. Senator Comrie really likes the recommendations in the report and spearheaded a letter to Jano that was signed by 12 senators in support of our recommendations. So we've got some real traction going there. It's up from, yeah, it's up from Hudson Valley. And Malone too. Yeah, and Malone too. So it was a nice, diverse, geographical spread. We spoke with the Senate Council office, and told them we'd get back to them as well with some of the cost factors. And some of the other, not really legislative changes, but the outer borough transit account, which was known as the outer borough transit fund, could be a funding vehicle for the city ticket, since that was a city funding mechanism. So following up with Laura, and at the conference I presented in San Francisco a few weeks back, last week, 10 days ago, whenever it was.
It's all a blur.
There were a couple people from the MTA, including one who was part of the Omni program, who similar to what Will was talking about earlier, indicated that the railroads weren't really part of the original forward thinking of implementation. So they're catching up now, which is why the report timing is so perfect. So it's well received, it was well done, and it is moving forward. So to be continued.
Was Rich even on?
No, so Rich was asked if we could call him, and I said we'd call him. And then he told me he was driving through the mountains.
Okay. All right.
He'll be on State Road 28, Kenosha at noon, going through the mountains. Will not have cell service. So I don't know if you want to try and call him, or we'll just put it on the agenda for
Next one.
Yeah.
All right,
Those who care.
Kara, you're up.
Jack is going to take it away.
As we heard a little bit about earlier, on Tuesday, Metro North announced that as part of the pilots and customers may have their ticket visually inspected prior to boarding. The railroad did not specify which stations. Some riders on Twitter had questions about whether this would delay service, while others were happy that Metro North is starting off-board ticket validation. Harlem line customers traveling between Pleasantville and Chappaqua continue to face delays of up to 15 minutes due to single tracking caused by.
That's the way we're reading it.
Yeah,
It
we
was
saw
the
that.
same thing.
Yeah. That's come up a few times since then.
What are the delays, did you?
They're single tracking to do some track work.
Yeah, they've also, it's a little more disruptive than that too, because they've also shifted all the outbound peak service to the opposite tracks to make room for that.
Two other items. Oh, sorry. Several riders have reported frustration with fellow riders vaping on the train, even with the MTA's and courtesy campaign, which is definitely frustrating. And then finally, shortly after our last meeting, as I'm sure you've heard, a mudslide caused significant disruptions to weekend service on the Hudson line during weekly season. Riders expressed gratitude that the service was running close to normal by Monday, but they're still, they're having
I
some
think
lingering
it's still 2
complaints.
AM, 2 PM change, they still haven't come back.
That's it, that's our social media.
I just want, one of the Ford Transit reporting is something that we both like. And they were telling people they could take to change it to turn off from that station. That's what the initial report said. Yes, it's like our favorite. And first it was hit by a train. And we said, well, the conductor couldn't stop the train. Why? Why couldn't the conductor stop the train? Why couldn't the conductor stop the train? When the person
Oh, the conductor stopped it, yes, right.
he was collecting tickets.
Because he's collecting tickets. Yeah, that's what.
We're moving that operation to.
Conductor have to blow the whistle at a crossing. It's not my job.
All right. So we got it all done and we have a
Not
couple
on
of
the
minutes.
north issue, just, I am seeing an uptick in, electric, vehicles on the subway.
Yes.
Bikes and scooters as the MTA are moving. They're enforced more effectively.
So they have, they have their campaign about no PUVs. Now should be written. That was hard fought to get, the MTA is actually the national leader in putting together policy, safety policy. And I've seen cops stop people from riding. I've also seen cops not stop people from riding. So I think it depends on who they are, what they're doing, by who they are. I mean, the cops, and what what they're doing at the time and where they're stationed and stuff. And whether it's crowded or what time it is. And cops are getting assaulted in the stations now as well.
There was a guy on Tuesday, I saw him walk down the stairs at Tarrytown, sat on the platform, and he rode to the ticket machine. And I said, you're not supposed to ride the thing on turn his head. And I walked to where I was going to board the train. He got on the thing and he rode through the shelter. I drove through the shelter and then he rode. And when I got off at Grand Central, he rode up that big ramp to the top. I mean,
Some people don't care. So there are, there are the campaigns, the messaging.
The part of the weather, it's like, as it gets colder, people are more, but
Yeah, but another factor is that there's no place to store the scooters at the stations. So there have been there's been a couple of efforts to look at better bike storage and better
survey last month.
Yeah.
But I think it's still up on the website where they're collecting suggestions for stations to have secure bike parking near stations.
That would likely include those kind of scooters, but a lot of people use them as first mile, last mile.
Yeah.
Don't want to get on the subway, or they use them as their work delivery vehicles as well. So, the number one, this has been an issue on LIRCC for well over a year. And the real number one concern that has been raised is the safety issue about charging and the batteries. And that, I think, is where most of the focus is making sure that they're not being charged, making sure that they're not being charged in stations, especially on trains.
Yes, you walk what I saw, on a train, right after the meeting, and you saw that. I've got to put a stop.
That's another one of those, the MTA's courtesy counts, the new ads that are all over the system. They do have a specific one also about not charging electric vehicles on any MTA property, but
On the
that's not
transport basis.
Night after night on the news, you see some apartment houses burned down or probably burned down, but these things in the lobby or in people's apartments.
Yeah, people die. So there's the city is ramping up its effort to get Amazon and others to stop selling non-UL listed batteries. Inherently, batteries are not unsafe if they're properly approved and properly charged and properly stored. However, that's not always the case.
Sometimes they're used to people buy them.
But they buy them if they've been, if they freeze and crack, if you store them outside, because you can't bring it inside. So that is something though that we can take that back to the board meeting, to the committee meeting about an increase. And we can raise that as well. Are there any specific trains or times?
I've been shocked to see it twice in rush hour on the last time. this week, so that's.
Yeah. I've seen.
So lots of availability, you're talking about the.
It's on the railroad also.
Was that
Oh,
full riding?
The surprises were, no,
I think
you know, people
bringing them on
putting a
board.
full EV bike on.
Oh, yeah, big mountain bikes too.
Yeah.
I mean, these are
And
mountain
like,
bikes.
this is, and it's
Yeah.
7:30
no way that they could pay the fare and come through the turnstile.
There's a sign.
We need to wrap this up.
Green, right?
Even during rush hour, there's. Part of the PEV policy was that you are allowed to have some vehicles, in quotes, but bikes and scooters of a certain size. Of course, people measuring their bikes before bringing them on board. So there is a distinction where some are technically allowed, but it's more of a courtesy thing where you wouldn't want to shove a big bike on board during rush hour.
So we have this other meeting to start. Next point. There's no complaints, any other issues. Make a motion.
We'll make a note and follow up with Pat Warner.
Motion to. Motion to adjourn.
And so our next meeting is the PCAC meeting in December, on December 14th. We reached out to the IG to see if he's available, the new IG. We'll keep you posted on that. Do not have the schedule of next year's meetings yet. As I went into my calendar to look when our March meeting is, I realized we don't have that for PCAC, so
But as we plan, we can at least assume for January that it would be the third.
Yeah, you can pretty much if it's.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna work on that next week.
And you're all very like flexible. If something comes up, we can move it.
Yeah.
All right, so we're back. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Thanks everybody for being here.
Yes.
We are adjourned.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Francie. Thank you. Teams.
We're just turning the Zoom